Hi everyone, Sal Khan here from Khan Academy. Welcome to our Daily Homeroom live stream. The whole goal of this is for all of us to stay connected during times of school closures. Depending on the day, this is a time for all of y'all to ask questions of myself or other guests or team members we might have at Khan Academy. It might be about navigating school, the school closures, how to learn a subject, or frankly, whatever y'all want to ask about. So feel free, if you're on YouTube or Facebook or some other social media channel, start asking questions in the message boards. We have team members who are looking at those questions and then surfacing them to me on a little doc that I have on the screen right over here. I also have my colleague Dan, who's going to be jumping in and help surface questions and then the other interesting things that y'all might post. Hey, Dan. And just as a reminder, Khan Academy is a not-for-profit. We have a mission of providing a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And as you can imagine, we could have never foreseen this COVID-19 crisis, the school closures, but we think it's our duty, given what we've been building over the last decade and the resources we have available, and given our mission, to really try to step up as much as we can in this time. So we've been trying to put all of the resources that we have from pre-K all the way through high school and college together so it can be coherent for parents, teachers, and students. We've been putting together learning plans and schedules and webinars for all of you. And we've been doing this live stream. We are funded by philanthropic donations from folks like yourself, and I'm becoming increasingly vocal to telling folks that we've been running at a deficit even before the crisis hit, and our costs are going up, and there's more that we want to do because of the crisis so that we can accelerate, hopefully, over the course of the summer and this coming back to school. So if you're in a position to do so, please think about donating to Khan Academy. I want to give a special shout out to in the last several weeks, Bank of America, followed by AT&T, Google.org, and Novartis. And we need more help. If you're representing a corporation, please think about donating Khan Academy, donating to Khan Academy in this time. Obviously, people are thinking about the virus, they're thinking about mental health, they're thinking about the economy. But how do we keep kids learning, especially the kids most in need who might not have access to other supports, I think is a really, really key question, and we want to help where we can. So with that, I'm happy to start answering some questions that we have here. So let's see, the first question I have, and I have to say, Susana Garcia Dominguez, you are a regular at asking questions. I guess good questions. These are the ones that get surfaced. There are no bad questions. But from YouTube, Susanna asks, "Hi Sal, what was your last most memorable meal? Please describe that experience." It's an interesting question. And my last most memorable meal. You know what it was? It was Thanksgiving like 4 or 5 years ago, and I had the idea to fast before Thanksgiving. And I have to say, when you fast for, I think I had fasted for 36 hours. Kids don't do this at home. You know, consult your doctor and things like that. But I find every now and then just a water fast. So I was drinking water. It kind of gets your sensory acuity up. And so going into that Thanksgiving, I had a cheesecake, and it was the best cheesecake I ever had. I think it was a good cheesecake, and I hadn't eaten for a long period of time. So yeah, that was the most memorable meal. But anyway, no dietary advice. Please don't go fast without medical supervision. Standard disclaimers.
Sal, we wanted to do something a little bit different today. We get a lot of amazing questions on this forum, but we also get amazing posts in social media. So we thought we'd share a few with our audience today. So the first one is from YouTube comment from Kirpal Singh. He says, "I give a roll of toilet paper to Sal Khan any day."
Thank you, Carpal. I hope one day we get a chance to, I guess, share toilet paper. That's a little, yeah. Actually, I've been getting a lot of toilet paper offers lately, which I think, because it is like the new gold, I guess. And I just want to let everyone know that, my family, we consider ourselves fortunate. We have, I think, at least a solid 2 week supply of toilet paper at home. So we're doing good. No need to worry about that.
Great. And then Sal, we have a question on YouTube from Rashda Idris. How many hours should an eighth grader study a day?
How many hours should an eighth grader study a day? So I think there's kind of a minimum, I think in anything, if you want to get better at it, it's good to build a habit to do a little bit every day. And so I would say if you're eighth grader, especially in times of school closures, if you could put in even a solid focused 30 minutes in each of the subjects that you want to make solid progress in, you're going to be in great shape when you go back to school in the fall. So I would put in at least 30 minutes a day on Khan Academy, and you could take a break on weekends, but Monday through Friday, try to put at least 30 minutes a day in Khan Academy. I would do at least 30 minutes on math. I would do 30 minutes a day of reading of some form. Find some books that are at your level that you really enjoy reading and read them for at least 30 minutes a day, hopefully longer than that if you really enjoy the book. And I would do at least 30 minutes a day of trying to write. It might be a little bit longer. It could be as simple as journaling. It could be, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world today. Write opinion pieces, create a blog, share it with friends and family. I think if you do those three things, you're going to be in decent shape. And then if you feel like you have that under control and you're able to do other things like go outside and run and spend time with your family and take on some fun projects that you've always wanted to do, then you could layer on a little bit more. You could maybe do another 30 minutes a day of science, and Khan Academy has a lot of resources there. We don't have as much as we'd like at the middle school level yet, but if you are looking to keep going, I think you could definitely look at some of the beginning units of our biology, high school chemistry, and even some of the things on things like Newton's laws and physics. You can start getting a leg up. So I would say that would be a good, if you're able to do it consistently, that would be a good amount of learning on a daily basis. Now, obviously, you could do more, but I would just say, that's great, but just don't stress yourself out. This is a time where we should make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and having time to run outside and play and spend time with family as well. So this is a good question from YouTube, Elliot H, who refers to me as Dumbledore Sal. And I enjoy that. That was part of my motivation for growing a beard, that hopefully someone would one day see the resemblance. When is it better to innovate through business, example, Apple, Google, or Tesla, rather than through philanthropy, example, Khan Academy, Wikipedia? You judge that a free world-class education would be better achieved philanthropically. What similar meaningful innovations happen better through business? That is a very, very good question, Elliot. So the way I think about it, I do believe, generally speaking, in market forces and capitalism, and so I think generally free enterprise and I guess you could say the profit motive, when markets function well, can create a lot of innovation. And some of those things that the Googles of the world, the Teslas, the Apples, and you can think of many others where people deployed capital in a place where they thought that they could create something of value to other people. People were willing to pay for that value, that created a return on the capital and more money to invest in that effort. So that's great. And I actually think rightfully that is most of our economy. But I think there are segments of our economy where either the markets for some reason aren't working well, and there's many reasons why markets sometimes don't work well. There might be externalities to what the market is capturing that aren't captured in the price. And people think about some of those things in terms of pollution and things like that. There's markets where there isn't transparent information. There's markets where the buyers, the sellers, and the beneficiaries are different people. So you don't get that same accountability that you would have in a traditional a marketplace. And there's situations where the market might work, but when it does work, it leads to outcomes that aren't consistent with our values. And I would say the two areas where, and it's not wholesale, there's definitely a lot of space for for-profits in education and in healthcare, but those are the two areas where I would say markets sometimes get a little bit kind of fall into that gray area. I think we as a society have a value system that if someone wants to learn, they should be able to learn, regardless of their parents' income or what neighborhood they grow up in. And if someone is bleeding, or dying, that we should treat them. We should treat them first before thinking about their ability to pay. I think those are, two universal values that we all have. And sometimes markets aren't able to make that happen. Now, some would argue that that's the role of government, that government can play those roles. But where I see the philanthropic sector being valuable is that gap of sometimes government is a little bit slow to move into something. They maybe can't innovate as fast. And then on the the for-profit side, they can innovate fast, but sometimes the motivations aren't completely in line with the value system. And so that's where I think philanthropic sector is really valuable. And Khan Academy in theory could have been a for-profit company. In fact, in the early days, some of the first folks I talked to were investors who was like, "Hey, we can make this a real thing." But the conversations around how do you monetize it? Oh, we could give this stuff for free, but then we would have to charge for that stuff. That felt a little bit inconsistent with at least what I was hoping Khan Academy could become. And when I looked through the world and history of institutions that had been able to serve many millions or hundreds of millions or billions of people and have been able to do it over generations. So not just, that first 20 or 30 years where you might have that founding team that wants to operate in a certain way, but over many, many, many generations, it's consistently it's nonprofits. I think even some of the great for-profits that we know today, history would tell us that in 30 or 40 or 50 years, they'll probably be very, very different organizations than they are right now, while many of the not-for-profits have a little bit more of a strong narrative over multiple generations. And it was delusional when I was someone operating out of a walk-in closet. But I do hope increasingly, and I'm more open about it, that Khan Academy goes well beyond me, and that in 100 years, folks around the planet are like, of course, access to a free world-class education for anyone anywhere is there. And who knows what Khan Academy looks like then. It might be, some type of virtual reality experience. It might be a pill you take. All of a sudden, a lot of things. Who knows? But that was the thinking.
Sal, we have a
So let's,
question on YouTube
okay,
from a
yeah.
teacher. Shendel Red Queen of Wonderland asks, Mr. Khan, do you have any advice for leadership? I've been trying to host Zoom meetings with my classes and I find it really difficult to do so.
So, Shendel, I'm assuming when you say you've been trying to advice for leadership with your classes, I'm assuming you're talking about like as kind of teaching or teaching virtually. Although I could give my 2 cents on leadership generally. Although I'm sure many of the Khan Academy team members might roll their eyes because I'm sure they have a better sense of how effective my leadership is or not. But if you're teaching virtually, and I have been working with several teachers here, and I've been doing a few myself, volunteering, trying to teach virtually. It actually takes me back to 2004 when I was tutoring my cousins, and we didn't have Zoom back then. We didn't have Google Hangouts back then, but I was trying to use a phone, and we had some tablet software that we could see each other's writing. And what I found is the more virtual it is, the more that you have to really drive interaction. So I've run a couple of sessions along with some teachers in a school district out here in California, and what we're all trying to do is, put up a problem, just an example problem. It doesn't have to be a super structured lesson, but you put up an example problem. It could just be on a whiteboard, or if you have a digital tablet, you can share your screen, and then you say, okay, who has some ideas on the first step? And so the more, and then even cold call people like, hey, Michael, what do you think is the next step? And so I think the more that you can get that exchange, the better and the more engaging it's going to be, especially if you're doing it on a modality like Zoom. What I say is if it's just me lecturing the whole time, that's no different than a video. So there's no reason to be on Zoom. You can just record that as a video and make it more available. So that's my general advice. Leadership advice broadly. I'm on a journey myself to learn a lot there. But I'm a big believer that the more that you can be authentic, be your true self, the more that you can, I think sometimes people say, oh, I have to be careful what I need to say because it might come off the wrong way, and so therefore I can't be authentic. But what I found is, no, you got to be careful what you think. And if you're thinking good thoughts, if you're thinking thoughts that would pass, let's call it the New York Times test, which is if your thoughts were published in the New York Times, would it be a good thing or a bad thing? If you can get your mind to the point of like you're genuinely thinking good thoughts, you're thinking of what is best for others. And look, we all have thoughts every now and then that we're not proud of. I've had my share of, but you have a little process where you're like, no, Sal, that's not a good thought. That's, yeah, that was a petty thought, or that was a thought that thought was driven by your ego and not what's best for other folks. If you can get good at that, then I think that liberates you to be very authentic with your leadership, because you are thinking things that you're not ashamed of. Someone I met when they said, the best way to look like you care about people is to actually care about people. It's a little bit of a hack in life. So I would say, yeah, I would say there's that, and always being able to balance that tension between what your heart tells you is right and what your head tells you is a reasonable approach to being able to get there. Throughout the last 10, 12 years of this Khan Academy journey, we've always had these debates inside of the organization of like, okay, we know that there's that mountain someplace that we want to get to the top of. That's a world in which literally billions of people have access to a free world-class education. Now, there's a fog. We don't know exactly how to get there. And we'll just try to follow the gradient and work our way through that fog to the top of that mountain. And we're going to make mistakes. But what you really have to do is say, okay, sometimes your heart might make you want to go directly for that mountain, but there might be a pit between, so you're not going to be able to get to the mountain. So your head has to say, no, we got to go 100 meters to the right and cross that bridge over there. The other thing I would say is, it's a lot like a chess game. A good chess player doesn't know exactly how they're going to win the game in the end, but they are definitely setting up their board so that they have as much optionality as possible and they have as much protection as possible. So they're getting their pieces out, they're opening it up, they're trying to control the center of the board. And so I'd say leadership or strategy generally, that's a good way to think about it. You're never going to have the whole thing figured out, but never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. I don't know if that's useful at all.
So Sal,
All right.
you've been a wonderful teaching role model for folks, and you've actually created wonderful role models as well. So I wanted to share this tweeted video from Shanita731, and the tweet says, "My daughter is making her own videos using Mr. Khan's voice while doing her kinder math packet. So thanks for the fun practice and instruction." So Felipe, can you share the video, please?
So here we have our 5. I'm going to use this color to circle my 5. And then we minus 4. So here's our 4. We're going to use orange to circle the 4. And so I want you to pause the video to work it out with a partner.
Thanks, Felipe.
Okay, you got that. So
So I wanted to thank all the people who are submitting and tweeting, and please send your messages, and we continue to enjoy them and share them.
Well, I think, my earlier comment about Khan Academy being a multi-generational institution, I think we found my replacement. I wouldn't be surprised. She's got the colors down. She's making us pause the video and try to enter it ourselves. I think Shanita's onto something. So yeah, I don't be surprised if in a few years we see more videos from her. That's great.
Awesome. And
So
then
there's
Sal, we have a
other
question
questions.
from,
Oh, yeah, go
yep.
ahead.
I was gonna say we have a question from Angel Chabra on YouTube, and she asks, what courses would you recommend to take as an 8th grader who wants to take more advanced classes that will push me?
Yeah, Angel, I would say there was a previous question around how much an 8th grader could study, et cetera. I mean, I would, math is foundational for a lot of things. So I would keep going on Khan Academy as far as you can go. If you're comfortable with 7th, 8th grade, go on to algebra, go on to algebra 2, go on to geometry. That's going to give you a good foundation. I think if you're really looking to push yourself, you can start going into a lot of the high school sciences, biology and chemistry. You probably already have enough math to tackle at least most of those subjects, at least at the kind of a first year high school level. And then physics, once you've learned the basics of a little bit, and this is probably beyond where you are now if you're in middle school, although who knows. But once you get the basics of quadratics and some of the basics of trigonometry, you can also think about going into physics. And on the humanities side, we have a lot of content on civics and American history and world history. I think especially if you're looking to kind of push yourself, you're probably already ready for that material. And our official SAT practice actually could be interesting as well. That's math, reading, and writing. And what a lot of folks don't realize, people normally take the SAT in their junior or senior years of high school, but a lot of that content is essentially at a middle school level. Actually, the highest math on the SAT is some of the more basic concepts from Algebra 2, which a lot of folks cover in 10th grade. But most of the math on the SAT is stuff that you will see in 8th or 9th grade. And if you're trying to get ahead, you're probably going to see that a little bit earlier. So that would be my best advice there. So let's see, other questions I see here on YouTube. Levi Corpio says, what was the last fun thing you have done with your child or with my children? Let's see, we do a lot of silly dancing. I know a lot of y'all are thinking, Sal, there's no way you dance silly. You must dance incredibly well. But I dance a little silly sometimes. So we do a lot of that, and yeah, that was the last fun thing. I mean, it was kind of dance hybrid with wrestling on the carpet last night. I think that was the most recent fun thing we did. And let's see, Anjani Bomadavara says, what's your favorite book? Well, I'll give several favorite books. So I'll give some books that play into my stereotype because I've talked to them a lot. I've talked a lot about science fiction and whether benevolent aliens are leveraging Khan Academy to prepare humanity for first contact. And in that stereotypical Sal, the books that I really have enjoyed are things like Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. I've often talked about that series as being something of an inspiration for Khan Academy, that it takes place in a future where someone is trying to collect the world's knowledge to shorten a galactic dark age by thousands of years. I've always enjoyed Diamond Age. It gets a little edgy, it's a little bit cyberpunk at parts, but I've liked the idea. The story it's not necessarily my favorite, but I've liked the message, which is by giving these orphans who live on barges in some dystopian future access to a free world-class education online, they're able to take over the world. I really like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I mean, I could go through all my favorite science fiction books, Dune, Childhood's End, Arthur C. Clarke, 2001, Arthur C. Clarke. So those are all incredible books. The general theme is it's about, these are what could humanity become, either for better or for worse. I think books that people might not expect me to enjoy, I think my favorite, Pride and Prejudice is definitely one of my all-time favorite books. I'm a big Mark Twain fan as well. Most of his books, but something about Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, I really enjoy, because once again, it's about someone who gets transported from the Industrial Revolution to King Arthur's Court, and by educating a new generation of what other would be kind of medieval children, they're able to help elevate what goes on. And here we see a list of books that children will not want to put down. So feel free to look at those as well. And there's a ton of other books that I'm sure I'm forgetting that I really enjoy reading. So let's
Sal,
see.
this is a reading list. This is a reading list that the staff put together for grouped by different age groups. So these are lists from the staff and recommendations from the staff.
And these are available, correct me if I'm wrong, from our schedules, and we have the keeplearning.khanacademy.org. If people go there, you dig around a little bit, you should find all of these types of resources that we're talking about. So let's see, there's other subjects. We have from YouTube, Satvik Agarwal says, "Hey Sal, how do you learn so many subjects at such great depth? What is your secret to studying anything?" So the secret is to enjoy it. And when you enjoy it and you're viewing yourself, you're not viewing yourself as like, oh, I gotta memorize this thing for tomorrow's test so that I don't fail. If you do it that way, it's nothing is pleasurable if you do it that way. But if you say, wow, there's this knowledge that for the last thousands of years humanity has been collecting, and I have access to it, and I get to ponder the connections between the knowledge. I think, for example, sometimes things like textbooks, they give you the knowledge, but they don't connect the dots with things you already know. And so I think it's actually a fun exercise to ponder. And actually, that's some of the favorite parts of my job now is if I'm trying to teach organic chemistry, for me to say, so how does this mechanism connect to what we learned before? Or are there some general themes here that the book is not saying? And what you find is when you ponder it for a little bit and just ask people questions, some of those connections form, and you get to be a little bit of a detective. So yeah, I mean, I view almost everything on Khan Academy and beyond as, look, we're trying to understand this mystery that we find ourselves in called life and the universe. And as human beings, I don't think there's anything more fulfilling than trying to make sense of that. And yes, sometimes some of the ways we get exposed to some of these the mysteries, whether it's in textbooks or other ways, it might be a little bit cryptic, but that's fun too. You know, when you watch the protagonist in a movie and they come up with some hieroglyphics, they don't just say, "Oh, this is hard to read. I'm going to give up and go, do something else." They're like, "This is exciting. This is an adventure." You know, when Harry Potter discovers a spell book or whatever, it's not like they just give up. They're like, "How do we read this thing? How does this connect to other things?" So I kind of view learning that way, and I have found, a lot of folks say, "Oh, I'm a math person," or "I'm a humanities person." I actually think if you stereotype yourself in that way, you're doing yourself an injustice. And I've been guilty of it myself. Early in my life, I didn't view myself as someone who really enjoyed writing, but now I do. And the way that I kind of made that transition is to realize that when I was writing just to try to impress someone else, just to try to get a grade, I wasn't enjoying it that much. But when I realized that writing is really just a way to get a point across, to communicate something or to express my imagination, then all of a sudden it became super exciting, and it's now one of my favorite activities to write or to communicate in other ways. So I think it's all about a mindset, to realize that very few people are either math people or writing people or humanities people. Once you're used to learning any subject, you can apply that same muscle to almost everything else and see the beauty in it. So so Scott Yang says wants us to extend our these live streams to an hour each. Well, that's tempting, as you can imagine. I am actually an introverted person, but obviously once y'all get me on my soapbox, I do keep going. But I think for everyone's sustainability, we'll try to keep them as close to 30 minutes as possible. But every now and then we're lining up some guests over the next few weeks that I think if we'll try to talk to them as long as we can keep them going. So let's see. There's other questions here from YouTube. Nikhil Govender, who's your favorite superhero? So not having thought about it more than the last 5 seconds, I have had an affinity to, I think Batman's interesting because he kind of has a growth mindset about things. Like he is not born with any innate ability. But he leverages the resources he does have, and I guess he was born with resources, according to the Batman legend. But he's focused on improving himself and becoming much stronger than whatever innate abilities he might have. So I think there's something very powerful about that. But I'm sure I'm forgetting many other superheroes that are quite compelling. So we've. Anjani asking another question. What's the advice you would give to students who are stressed about the situation? So Anjani, I mean, the best thing to realize is, first of all, you're not alone. That's helped me at sometimes where I started getting a little worried about certain family members who might be living by themselves, or, they have a cough all of a sudden. I'm like, oh no, do they have COVID? Is that, we're all in this together, and all you can do in life generally, to quote Frozen 1 and Frozen 2, is if you can't control a situation, to kind of let it go. Like, don't try to think too much about it if it's out of your sphere of control. And of the things that are in your sphere of control, do the next right thing. And then the chips fall where they do. In Vedic philosophy, there's this notion of action. There's rajasic action, where you're focused on the outcome, and then there's sattvic action, which is, in Sanskrit, it's truthful action, which is you're doing it just because it's the right thing to do, regardless of what the outcome is. And I think a lot of our stress in life, a lot of our anxiety in life, a lot of our suffering in life happens because we get attached to outcomes. We're like, oh, that thing has to happen, and then, oh, what if it doesn't happen? And then you start procrastinating, or you get stressed, you get anxious about it. But if you just say, look, none of us have control over the universe or over this world. All we can do is just the next right thing, and we do the next right thing, and just accept wherever the chips fall. Is one way to keep with moving forward and doing the right thing without getting overwhelmed. The other thing I would recommend is things like meditation, exercise. These are great ways to still your mind, to get your mind out of some of the thought patterns that a lot of folks are experiencing right now. I would recommend minimize watching the news. Most of us know what's going on. It doesn't hurt to watch, for 20 minutes a day or something like that. Say, okay, that's what's going on there, or that's what the government's doing. But I think if you watch too much of it, the news is almost designed to keep you in this state of anxiety and the state of that get your cortisol level up that normally only happens in nature when a bear is chasing you, which doesn't happen too often if you were just wandering the forest. But it's good for ratings because it gets you engaged, but it could be bad for your mental health. So I would say spend as much time outside, exercising, time with family, stay connected through video conferencing to friends and family, meditate as much as you can, and also remind yourself, don't get caught up with stuff that is out of your sphere of control. Just stay within your sphere of control and say, well, what's the next right thing I can do, and feel good about that. So we are at time. Sorry, Scott, we're not going to go an hour today, although maybe in the future. But these were great questions. I really enjoyed it. And Dan, thanks for bringing in some of this. Is our first time. Every day we're trying a few new bells and whistles. Felipe's in the background, figuring out new ways that we can leverage this tool that we're doing to live stream. But I really enjoy this, and thanks for everyone for joining. This is a way for all of us to stay connected. And just as a reminder, we are not for profit, and if you're in a position to do so, please think about donating to Khan Academy. Thanks, everyone.